This footage was shot unedited in 4K resolution at 30 frames per second in the cinematic mode on the OnePlus 8T, and in my opinion looks absolutely fantastic. And it does make you wonder, if phones like this that cost half as much as the flagships of today can perform so closely to the most expensive iPhones and Samsungs, then why the hell are we paying an extra 50% premium on those higher end devices when all this mid-range tech is so close, or even in some cases better than those higher end phones? I'm Michael, and for the last month I've been using the OnePlus 8T. This is my review. So the first thing we should talk about with the 8T is the price. In Europe, the base model starts at €599, but in the US, you can only get the highest spec option for $749. But if you take both of those prices and put them next to the higher tier phones, let's say an iPhone Pro, then you're looking at nearly half the price for the 8T, which I think is incredible value. OnePlus certainly didn't cut any corners with the unboxing. Inside the main box is the phone itself, the paperwork and OnePlus stickers. You then get a free see-through case with Never Settle emblazoned on the side, a thick, robust feeling red USB-C to USB-C cable, and finally, the 65-watt fast charger. That's right. Unlike this year's iPhone, which costs up to $1,500 and does not come with a charger included, OnePlus includes a super powerful fast charger in the box for free. So as a whole package, pretty good. The 8T has a 6.5-inch 1080p 120Hz HDR Plus screen. The 120Hz panel is awesome. It makes the phone feel extremely buttery and smooth, and feels super responsive to the touch. Using basic actions on the screen like scrolling on an article or swiping between pictures feels extremely smooth. High refresh screens are on nearly every $1,000 phone this year, minus the iPhone of course, and in my opinion is something you just can't go back from once you've experienced it. You have to touch it for yourself, my camera can't do it justice, but I honestly feel if you've had a 120Hz screen on a phone, going back to a 60Hz panel does feel dated. Overall, the 1080p panel looks great and gets super bright at 1300 nits. The only small thing I missed was playing YouTube videos in high resolution. But is it a deal breaker? No. Videos on Netflix and YouTube look vivid and crispy thanks to that HDR Plus screen, and in general, it's just a very nice OLED panel. So then we get to the design and build quality of the OnePlus 8T, and it has all the markings of a premium handset. It's simple, yet in parts elegant. It's well built out of metal and glass and could easily be marked at a much higher price. Although one thing's for sure, it has lost its uniqueness compared to older OnePlus handsets. OnePlus has ditched the curved screen and returned to a completely flat one, which ergonomically makes sense. I found it easier to hold compared to previous iterations, and it will help stop accidental touches. But it also looks less cool. Because they ditched the curved glass, the bezels are a little thicker, the front section of the phone now looks like nearly every other Chinese phone. Not that all Chinese phones look the same, but this one does. Yes, the camera square of destiny has arrived on the OnePlus 8T, and I honestly don't mind it. My friends say it looks more generic, but that's their problem, not mine. I don't have to look at it. I think as camera squares go, if you actually look at the details of this design, it's safe, simple, fine, meh, I don't really care. The rest of the back panel is made out of glass and is curved almost in the same way that the front glass is curved in the older OnePlus phones, and I've noticed over the last month that this color, the aquamarine version, because it has a special coating that hides fingerprints better, it also means you can actually grip it quite well, and I have been, with confidence, using it without a case. Which does have some downsides. Mostly those downsides are dropping it off a table on a night out, and yes, it will dent, and yes, you will be sad, and yes, a case will look more appealing. Luckily, they throw in a free one, or if you want a matching color, OnePlus do that too. If we move round from the dent, we have the bottom firing speaker, which pairs with the speaker at the top to produce a decent but not mind-blowing audio experience. it does lack the depth and clarity of higher end phones even from a few years ago, but overall it's been fine and it's not something I personally prioritize. On the right side of the phone, you have the classic OnePlus alert slider, which is awesome. Although the buttons aren't of the same quality as the older OnePlus 7 Pro, they're still good quality, better than most phones, but not as good. Then we get to the power, and I can honestly say that this is the fastest phone I've ever personally used. Powering the 8T is a Snapdragon 865 along with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 3.1 UFS storage, and this phone absolutely flies. Opening and loading apps is lightning fast. Navigating menus is a breeze and animations are smooth and speedy, and you can easily play the highest tier games on the most graphically intensive settings without any worries, and I think this chip will be able to power those games for many years to come. And games like Call of Duty Mobile have been optimized to take advantage of that 120Hz display, so will look and feel even smoother to the touch. The 8T will easily keep up with the more expensive OnePlus 8 Pro, as well as any higher end $1,000 plus phone, and the 12 gigs of RAM on board is well managed by the operating system, allowing apps to stay running in the background for days. OnePlus have introduced a new look for its operating system this year. This is for sure more of a visual upgrade, with OnePlus taking inspiration from Samsung's One UI. Everything seems a lot cleaner. The menus are less complex and easy to reach, and on the whole it does well to retain the feeling of speed and stock Android without running it with cheap gimmicks, stupid animations and outrageous design choices. Talking of speed, the 8T comes 5G ready. It only runs on the sub-6 variant, it doesn't come with the higher millimeter wave, but when I'm out and about in the city here in Shenzhen, I get around 300 to 400 megabytes a second. One thing I have noticed is that 5G does have an effect on battery life. This phone has a 4500 mAh battery, and if I stay connected on Wi-Fi, this thing will last a full day with more than 6 to 7 hours of screen on time. But as soon as I get outside on the 5G, that will begin to drop at a much higher rate. Not shocking, but something to keep in mind. One thing the 8T doesn't have is an IP water resistance rating. Well, this is kind of confusing because in the US, it does have the certification on T-Mobile, and everywhere else, it doesn't, even though this is the same phone. There's no changes internally. So basically, I think OnePlus didn't want to pay for that certification in order to keep the price down, but T-Mobile must have subsidized it somehow in order to say that their phones do have it. So if you're the kind of person that likes to play with their phone over water, then something to consider for sure. Another thing missing on the 8T is wireless charging, and this is something that is on all other higher end phones, and I think OnePlus decided to do this again to keep the price down and to stop the 8T from flying too close to its bigger brother, the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now for some people, wireless charging is important. They're used to it, they kind of expect it at this point, and that's fair enough. But for me, I couldn't care less, because the wired charging on this phone is insane. Even a month later, this charging brick amazes me. It's 65 watts and will charge 58% of the 8T's battery in just 15 minutes, and will go on to charge 100% of the 4500 mAh battery in 39 minutes. It's nice knowing that if I want to quickly top up, I can go grab a shower and come out with the phone being at 100%. Every time it happens, it's like a tiny little surprise, and what's best is that it comes in the box for free. Then we get to the cameras, and this is where OnePlus has traditionally fallen behind the higher end phones from a technical point of view, and with the 8T, it's the same story. But is it really that far behind now? Is it worth paying an extra 500 euros for slightly better quality that at most times won't even be noticeable? I would argue for most people, no. Now I want to get this quickly out of the way and say that there are 4 lenses on this phone, a 48 megapixel primary sensor, a 16 megapixel ultra wide, a 5 megapixel macro lens, and a monochrome sensor. And I can safely say that the macro lens and monochrome lens are not that great nor important. The macro lens is of low quality and you need to be at a perfect distance to take decent photos like this, which took me 3 or 4 attempts. The monochrome sensor is fine, just fine. It doesn't do any better than if you put a photo into a photo editing app and turned that black and white, but if you like black and white photography, I guess it's a nice feature. However, the main primary sensor and the ultra-wide, the sensors everyone will be using, they have been great. I love using the ultra-wide lens on the 8T. It's sharp, the colors are consistent with the main lens, and it has a wider field of view than previous OnePlus devices, and it just creates such a dramatic effect so well. It's good for outdoors and street photography, and the increased resolution to 16 megapixels has given me a lot more confidence to rely on this camera in most situations. Yes, it's a tad soft around the edges, but I don't think it's generally noticeable, and nighttime performance is also decent on the ultra-wide. Then we get to the main lens, which to my eye does a really good job and can keep up with the more expensive $1,000 phones. No, the color reproduction is not as natural as the Pixel phones, and the dynamic range is not as good as an iPhone or Samsung flagship, but it's close. It's closer than it's ever been. In good light, there's nearly no difference. Pictures look crystal clear, and you would have to do some serious pixel peeping to see otherwise. And in low light, OnePlus Nightscape does a pretty good job of pulling in details and light out of the shadows. Again, just as good, and in some cases better than top-tier flagships. And this is the thing, because photos from this phone are so close to those higher end flagships, if you took these photos and edited them like you were if you were uploading to social media and then posted them on Instagram, I honestly don't think anyone would be able to tell the difference and would be able to tell that those pictures came from a phone that cost 599 euros. The gap in quality is becoming so close between all phones that I honestly think you could label these photos as hashtag shot on iPhone and nobody would blink an eye. And that's kind of the whole overarching theme of this phone. Its value compared to its performance and capabilities makes it so easy to recommend to friends and family. No, it doesn't have wireless charging, an IP rating, or a quad HD display, but it has everything else for nearly half the price. And that is pretty impressive. And if you have enjoyed watching this video, it would be absolutely awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. And if you have any comments or questions about the AT, please drop them down in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.